Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. Happy Friday, it's May 9th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. The Catholic Church has entered a new era with its first ever U.S.-born Pope.
There's a lot of pride in the church. I think people are really happy about the future and all the things that will be done.
We'll hear reaction from the Diocese of Fresno on this historic time for the church, but first, these news headlines. A group of bipartisan legislators in the House have reintroduced a bill that would offer legal status for farm workers. The Farm Workforce Modernization Act seeks to address worker shortages in agriculture. Among the strategies proposed is offering a temporary legal status for workers and streamlining the H-2A visa process. Democrats Jim Costa and Adam Gray, along with Republican David Valadao, are among the Valley representatives co-sponsoring the bill. The CEO of Golden Valley Health Centers says he's concerned about the GOP's proposed cuts to Medicaid. Golden Valley Health Centers is based in Merced and serves around 165,000 people on Medi-Cal who are low income. CEO David Quakenbush said in a statement on Thursday that the healthcare cuts could threaten the health of millions of families in the state. Congressional Republicans have proposed the cuts as a way of reducing government spending. California's gray wolf population has grown quickly in the last decade. Cap Radio's Manola Sequoia has more on a UC Davis report analyzing the cost of their presence for ranchers.
Last year, the State Department of Fish and Wildlife confirmed 58 livestock, mostly cattle, were killed by wolves. The death of cattle can cost ranchers thousands of dollars. But UC Davis researchers say indirect impacts are an even bigger cost and can amount to tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. Tina Saitone is a UC Davis researcher focused on livestock and rangeland economics. She co-authored the study.
When cattle producers sell their calves, they're typically sold on a per pound basis. And so if the stress of living among wolves causes them to fail to gain as much weight, then that's a direct hit to a cattle producer's pocketbook.
Saitone says stress also negatively impacts their ability to reproduce. She says this issue will only continue to spread if left unchecked. In Sacramento, I'm Manola Sequoia.
Assemblymember Dr. Jasmeet Bains says she's seeking answers from the State Department of Justice on the ongoing investigation of Zach Scrivener. He's the former Kern County supervisor who's facing child cruelty and weapons charges. In a letter to the state attorney general, Bains questions why Scrivener is not also facing child sexual abuse charges, despite the DOJ previously stating that Scrivener allegedly got into bed with one of his children. In her letter, Bain says there's confusion about the way Scrivener's case is being handled. Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks are moving to a cashless fee system. This means visitors to the national parks will only be able to use credit or debit or mobile payments to enter. The change will kick in on May 21st, according to park officials. This comes just as the busy tourist season approaches.
Looking for a way to support KVPR but can't write that big check at the moment? What about that old unwanted car in the driveway? Your vehicle donation could net hundreds of dollars for KVPR. It's easy. We'll tow it away free of charge, KVPR gets a check, and you'll get a receipt for your taxes. And we can take RVs, boats, and motorcycles too. Find out more at kvpr.org/cars or call 855-277-2346.
And now to our main story. That's thousands of people cheering on Thursday as white smoke billowed into the sky above the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican City. The white smoke symbolizes to the world that a new pope has been chosen to lead the Catholic Church. Many of us watched the moment on our TVs or phones or heard it on the radio. Chandler Marquez was among the thousands of people lucky enough to be there in person. Chandler is the spokesperson for the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fresno, and he joined us last month to discuss the impact of the death of Pope Francis. At that time, cardinals were preparing for the conclave, a secretive voting process where cardinals choose the next pope. Now, history has been made. A U.S.-born cardinal who spent time as a bishop in Latin America will lead the Catholic Church. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost will now be known as Pope Leo XIV.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
That's Pope Leo greeting the crowd on Thursday in Rome. He was born in Chicago, studied math at Villanova University, and spent many years as a missionary and bishop in Peru. He was named cardinal just last year by Pope Francis. Pope Leo's selection was a big surprise to many, and it was to Chandler, who joined us to discuss the selection. We caught up with him right after Pope Leo finished his speech on Thursday in St. Peter's Square. Chandler begins by describing where he was when the white smoke emerged.
Yeah, so I was actually on top of the Vatican with media members from around the world. It's kind of funny, Elizabeth, is that people were like cheering on seagulls that were landing on top of the chimney because they're on the big screens, right? So people are just roared for this one seagull for whatever reason. And we all jumped up and because we're all trying to get on our positions for our shots. And it's like, oh, it's just a seagull. And like our shoulders just kind of went down,
Mm-hmm.
And then like 2 minutes later, white smoke starts coming out of that chimney. And it was the real thing.
Wow.
And, we were all expecting to be there till, 9:30 again tonight. So for it to happen so early in the afternoon was really cool, really shocking.
Yeah, it sounds like a surprise and an auspicious seagull. Not a biblical dove, but a seagull.
Yeah, right. Too bad it wasn't a dove.
Yeah, you said you were there with media partners, but I think folks would want to know what took you to Rome. How did you arrange this?
Bishop Brennan decided that he wanted to give his flock real-time information. He got so many questions and inquiries about conclave and pope and who's going to be the next pope and where's our church, going in the future. And it's like, him and I had a conversation and he was like, let's get boots on the ground. So I jumped on the plane and got to Rome, and I've been doing my best to keep everyone in the loop as far as the Central Valley goes. And it's an honor to represent the Central Valley in California here in Rome.
Yes. Who have you spoken with, and what's the mood been like?
The mood's really good. It's been really good since the start of the conclave. Today, I was running down the streets of Rome from St. Peter's Square back to a place where I could conduct media interviews, and church bells were just ringing the whole time. I probably ran about, 3 miles.
Wow.
And church bells all 3 miles. The buses stopped, and if anyone who's been to Rome, buses are like an integral part of the streets, and so people were just in the streets. Everyone's happy. People are waving their country flags. There's a lot of pride in the church. I think people are really happy about the future and all the things that will be done.
So the world now knows Pope Leo XIV will lead the Catholic Church. His election's significant because he's the first pope from the United States. Second one from the Americas, of course, because Pope Francis was the first, being from Argentina. But first, tell us what you think the significance is that the last two popes are from the Americas, and what do you think it means that Pope Leo XIV is from the U.S. specifically?
Well, I'll say a few things about that, Elizabeth. One would be, I'm really excited that he's from America. And the first thing that came to my mind was Villanova grad and Chicago boy. Is he a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan? And so just to kind of make him personable like that in my head was really cool. I think that the name Leo is really fitting for our church and where it is today, because we need a fierce lion type leader to take us where we need to go and where we will go, right? But he's been described as gentle. So I think that's going to be a great nod to Pope Francis. And simultaneously, he came out and it was pointed out to me that his garb had a few nods to Pope Benedict. So I think he'll be a good balance of the two. And I think he'll be a great leader for our church.
And he has a more reserved personality, I've read and sort of observed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I've heard the same in reports. I was talking to Bishop Brennan as I was running to do this interview with you, Elizabeth. And the first thing he said was actually what our quote is for the Diocese of Fresno is always forward. And, we kind of had a good chuckle about that because I think we're both excited about the future of the church under Pope Leo's papacy. And then, the second thing Bishop Brennan described him as is a profound leader. And I think that kind of goes back to his reservedness and his coming off as a little stoic. And I think we've seen plenty of good leaders who come across the same way.
Is there any national pride among other U.S. delegations there now that Pope Leo is the first pope born in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think there's going to be pride all over the U.S., right? And it's kind of funny. I was one of the only Americans in the media pit with a bunch of Italian journalists. And as soon as everyone found out he was American, everyone's looking at me, So it was kind of cool to get that nod from my fellow colleagues from around the world. And it's really cool that we as Americans can take a little pride in that.
Yeah, and as you reflect on the new pope and where the world is sort of at in this moment, how are you hoping that Pope Leo's leadership and the Catholic Church in general really will respond to the major issues that the world is facing right now?
Well, the church will respond, right? Because we have to. We're not a silent church. We have to stand up for the voiceless. And there's so many voiceless out there in the world right now in a lot of different areas. The one thing I thought was really profound that he said as he came out and spoke to his flock, this afternoon was, evil will not prevail. And that struck me on a lot of different chords. But one being that, there is so much hype around this conclave. And I think a lot of it came from Hollywood and media outlets. But, the cardinals were on the same page. It didn't take them long to figure out who needed to lead the church. And I think that's a really, really good sign for the future of the church.
That was Chandler Marquez, spokesman for the Catholic Diocese of Fresno. Thank you so much, Chandler.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Take care.
And according to Pew Research, the United States has the fourth largest number of Catholics in the world. That's behind Brazil, Mexico, and the Philippines. Around 20% of adults in the U.S. describe themselves as Catholic. And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you're going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.